Chung Ae signed the adoption papers on a Thursday. He did not know he was signing them. His mother had placed a folder in front of him between the soup course and the main dish, said, "These need your signature, it is an insurance matter," and Chung Ae, who trusted Ha-rin in the specific, dangerous way that sons trust mothers who have never once lied to them about anything important, had signed without reading. He found out what he had signed 3 days later. He did not speak for a very long time. "You forged," he started. "I did not forge anything," Ha-rin said pleasantly, refilling his tea. "Your signature is right there. That is your signature." "Iyama. Chung Iya. I have an organization to run. I travel. My schedule alone will be adjusted," Ha-rin said. "Sit down. Eat your soup." He did not sit down. He stood in his parents' kitchen in a charcoal brioni suit that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and he looked at his mother, 65 years old, 5'3", completely unintimidated, and felt, for the first time in 11 years of running an operation that made grown men sweat through their shirts, that he had absolutely no power in this room. His father, Kennedy Adam, walked in from the garden in cream linen trousers and a white shirt rolled at the sleeves. 70 years old. Atlanta, Georgia original. Built like a man who had once played college football, and had since redirected that energy entirely into business and the patient management of Ha-rin's more ambitious ideas. He looked at Chung Ae. He looked at Ha-rin. He poured himself coffee. "You knew," Chung Ae said. "I suggested it," Kennedy said, with the particular calm of a man who has already accepted all possible outcomes. "You suggested adopting children. For me. Without asking me." "We asked you," Ha-rin said. 3 times. You said no 3 times. So we proceeded." She set down her spoon. "Chung Ae, you are 35 years old. You refused to marry. You work until 2 in the morning. You eat dinner at your desk and you call it dinner." Her voice stayed gentle, but something underneath it had iron in it. "Your father and I are not going to watch you disappear into that building and call it a life." Kennedy sat down, wrapped both hands around his mug. "They're 7 years old, son. Twins. Girls." He looked up. "The paperwork is done. They come home on Friday." Chung Ae looked at his father for a long time. Kennedy looked back the way men from Atlanta look at things they have already decided. Warm, immovable, completely finished with the discussion. Chung Ae picked up his tea, set it down, straightened his cuff. "I want to see the file," he said. It was the closest thing to surrender that he knew how to offer. Welcome to Black Silk Stories, the home of Afro-Korean stories that hit different. Subscribe, drop a comment, and do not go anywhere. This is only the beginning. He read the file twice that night. Arin and Jian, 7 years old. Born 11 minutes apart. Arin first, loud and insistent about it. Jian second, quiet and entirely unbothered by the 11 minutes. They had been at the orphanage since they were 3. No listed relatives. Their file had 1 photograph, 2 small faces close together. Arin's chin tilted up like she was already arguing with someone. Jian's eyes looking directly at the camera with the steadiness of someone deciding whether to trust the person holding it. Chung Ae sat with that photograph for longer than he meant to. Then he closed the file, put on his jacket and went back to work. He told himself he was not nervous. He was a man who made 12 senior lieutenants sweat in a boardroom without raising his voice. He was not nervous about 2 7-year-olds. He was nervous. They arrived on a Friday afternoon in Ha-rin's car, which his mother had sent with her personal driver, Marcus, a composed, broad-shouldered man from Busan who had worked for the Adam family for 9 years and had the professional quality of seeing everything and reacting to nothing. Chung Ae was already at his parents' house when the car pulled in. He had told himself he was there for dinner. That was all. He was there for dinner, and it happened to be the same Friday. He was standing on the front steps in a midnight navy suit, no tie, collar open, powerful in the way that had nothing to do with trying, when the car doors opened. Arin came out first. She was wearing a pale yellow dress with a white Peter Pan collar, white knee socks, and small cognac leather Mary Janes that Ha-rin had clearly chosen, because they were the kind of shoes that meant, "You are loved and someone thought about you this morning." Her hair was in 2 neat puffs with yellow ribbon. She looked like she had arrived to conduct a very important meeting, and was deciding where to sit. She looked up at the house. Then up at Chung Ae. "You must be our father," she said. Not a question. A conclusion. delivered with the certainty of someone checking an item off a list. Chung-Ai's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Jian appeared beside her. She was wearing the same dress in soft white, her hair in a single braid with a white ribbon. She was already looking at him, not the way children usually looked at new adults with shyness or performance. She looked at him the way she would look at anything she intended to understand. Carefully. Completely. Without rush. Neither of them moved toward him. They waited. Chung-Ai came down 2 steps. He crouched, which in a suit that well made was its own kind of statement, and looked at them at eye level for the first time. I am Chung-Ai, he said. We know, Arin said. Grandma showed us a picture. You look very serious in pictures. I am serious, he said. In real life too? She asked. Yes. Arin looked at Jian. Jian looked at Arin. The 1-second conversation. Then Arin looked back at him. That is okay, she said generously. We will help with that. Chung-Ai did not know what to say to this, which was a new experience. Jian stepped forward. Just 1 step. And she held out her hand, not the way children hold out hands uncertainly, but formally like a person who had decided a proper introduction required it. He shook it. Her grip was small and completely serious. Jian, she said. Chung-Ai, he said. She nodded once. Stepped back. And that was that. Behind him on the front steps, Harin was pressing one hand to her mouth. Kennedy stood beside her with both hands in his pockets, watching his son crouch on the driveway shaking a 7-year-old's hand, and the expression on his face was the one he saved for things he knew would matter later. Dinner that night was the strangest meal of Chung-Ai's adult life. He sat at the head of the table. Harin had placed him there, which he understood now was not accidental, in his navy suit, and across from him were 2 small girls in their ribbons and Mary Janes eating doenjang jjigae with the focus of people who had decided food was worth taking seriously. Arin ate with commentary. She had opinions about the tofu density and shared them openly with the chef, a young man named Dae-young who had only been with the Adam family 4 months and was therefore less prepared for this than Marcus would have been. The tofu is very soft, Arin said. I like it, but Jian likes it slightly less soft. Can you remember that? Dae-young looked at Harin. Harin gave him a small nod that meant yes, you are now receiving instructions from a 7-year-old. This is your life now. Of course, Dae-young said. Jian, without looking up, said quietly, thank you. She said it with the gravity of someone who understood that service deserved acknowledgement. Dae-young looked slightly startled. Then he stood a little straighter. Chung-Ai watched this and said nothing. He watched Jian eat. She was methodical. She checked what was in each dish before she put it on her rice. She noticed when Kennedy's water glass was low and said, Grandpa, water, without ceremony, and Kennedy refilled it without ceremony, because somehow in the span of 3 hours these two had already found their rhythm. You are very quiet, Arin said to Chung-Ai. He looked at her. I am thinking. About what? About many things. Arin considered this. Is one of the things us? A pause. Yes. Good, she said, and returned to her tofu. You should think about us. We are your daughters now. The word landed on the table like something physical. Arin went very still. Kennedy looked at his bowl. Chung-Ai looked at Arin for a long time. She looked back with those eyes that were already too old for her face. Does that bother you? She asked. Not combative. Genuinely curious. The question of a child who wanted true information, not comfort. No, Chung-Ai said. It was the truth. He had not planned for it to be true, but he said it and it was. Arin nodded once, satisfied. Good. Then eat more. Grandma says you eat like a man who is always leaving. Harin made a sound into her water glass. Kennedy coughed. Chung-Ai picked up his spoon. 3 weeks passed. In 3 weeks, the Adam household was completely rearranged. Not loudly. Not with demands or tantrums. Quietly, systematically, and with the efficiency of 2 people who had survived their first 4 years of life without anyone arranging anything for them, and had therefore developed very strong opinions about how things should be arranged now that they had the opportunity. The chef Dae-young received his first written menu note on a Monday morning. It was in large, careful letters pressed hard into the paper, on stationery that Harin had bought for them. Cream paper with a small floral border, because Harin believed in beautiful things for small hands. Monday, Grandpa should have mayak guk. Jian checked the book in Grandma's study and seaweed is good for blood pressure. No extra salt. Please also make Appa's lunch very filling. He did not eat dinner on Saturday and he looked thin in his suit. He will say he is fine. He is not fine. Arin and Jian. Daeyoung read it. Read it again. Went to find Marcus. Marcus, he said. Are the children running the house? Marcus, who was 38 and had seen many things in 9 years of service, said without inflection. Adjust. Daeyoung adjusted. What Daeyoung did not know was that Jian had been in the kitchen at 5:50 that morning. She had come downstairs in pajamas, ivory cotton with small blue stars, Harin's choice, beautiful in the way things are beautiful when someone loves you before you arrive, and checked the seaweed was soaking correctly. She had looked at the pot for 30 seconds, nodded, left. Daeyoung had been there. He had seen her. He had decided by some animal instinct to say absolutely nothing. Chung Ae's office was in a Gangnam building that had no signage because the people who needed to find him already knew where it was. His personal secretary, a sharp, immaculate woman named Cha Sul-ji, who had survived 3 years in this position through a combination of precision and the ability to read the room before the room had finished decorating itself, arrived on a Tuesday to find a folded note on her desk. She unfolded it. Dear Secretary Cha, we have looked at Appa's schedule. There is no lunch on Tuesdays or Thursdays. This is wrong. Also, the last meeting on Wednesdays is at 9 p.m. Brains need rest. Appa's brain is very busy and it needs more rest than a normal brain. Please change this. We have told him but he says his schedule is his schedule. He is wrong. Please fix it anyway. Thank you. Arin and Jian. P.S. Jian says you also have a very busy schedule. She noticed you were still in the building at 8 p.m. last Thursday. Please also eat lunch. Secretary Cha stood holding this note for a considerable time. Then she opened Chung Ae's calendar. She moved 3 Tuesday meetings. She pushed the Wednesday 9 p.m. slot to 7:30. She blocked 12:30 to 1:30 daily and labeled it simply, unavailable. When Chung Ae arrived and opened his calendar, he stopped moving. Cha. Yes, sir. My schedule has changed. Yes, sir. I did not authorize changes. A pause that lasted exactly the right amount of time. The authorization came from a higher level, sir. Chung Ae looked at Secretary Cha with the look that had made a boardroom of dangerous men stop breathing. Secretary Cha looked at the wall behind his left shoulder and maintained perfect composure. Chung Ae looked back at his calendar. He picked up his fountain pen, black lacquer, gold nib, the kind of pen that meant business in the way that quiet things mean business, and said nothing. He ate lunch at 12:30. It was the first real midday meal he had eaten in 4 years. He sat in the small room off his office that was meant for informal meetings, and he ate rice and grilled fish that Daeyoung had sent up in a covered box with a folded note that said simply, Jian asked me to make sure this arrived warm. He sat there for an hour and the silence felt strange, and then it felt like something he hadn't known he was missing. He did not change the schedule back. On a Saturday evening 3 weeks after the girls arrived, Chung Ae came home late. Not his building, his parents' house, which had quietly become home in a way his apartment had stopped being, though he had not said this to anyone and did not plan to. He came in at 8:15 in a black wool overcoat over a charcoal suit, the kind of silhouette that belonged on a different kind of television show than this one, and found Arin in the living room. She was sitting on the floor in a cream cashmere pajama set with small embroidered roses at the collar. Harin's doing, obviously, because Harin had decided within 48 hours that these girls would be dressed beautifully for every single moment including sleep, and she was waiting. Not for anything. For him specifically. He understood this immediately. You are late, she said. I had work. You always have work. She said it without accusation. Just information. Come sit. He looked at the floor. He was in a $4,000 suit. He sat on the floor. Arin turned to face him fully, the way she did when she intended to have a real conversation. Appa. He had not gotten used to the word. He suspected he was not supposed to get used to it. It was supposed to land every time a little bit like a hand on the chest. Appa, she said again more quietly. Are you happy that we are here? The room was very still. Yes, he said. You do not seem happy sometimes. I am not good at seeming, he said. I am better at being. Arin thought about this very seriously. That is okay, she decided. Jian is the same. She does not seem things. She just is them. She looked up at him. She loves you already, you know. She just will not say it for a while. She has to be sure first. And you? He said. Are you sure? Arin looked at him with those eyes that had seen things a 7-year-old should not have had to see, that had waited in a place children should not have had to wait, that had still somehow come out on the other side with all their warmth intact. I decided in the car, she said simply. On the first day. I looked at you on the steps and I decided. Chung-yi looked at his daughter. He had run an organization across 4 countries. He had sat across from men who wanted to destroy him and had not blinked. He had built something from pressure and silence and will alone, and he had thought that was what strength looked like. He was beginning to revise his definition. Go to sleep, he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Arin got up, smoothed her pajamas with the dignity of a much older person. Then she stopped beside him and patted his shoulder twice, the same way every time, the gesture that meant, I see you and you are going to be fine and I have decided this so it is true. Jian left you a note on your pillow, she said. About breakfast. She wants you to stay tomorrow morning. She is going to ask De-young to make your eggs the right way. A pause. She already knows your right way. She watched you twice. Then she walked upstairs in her embroidered cream pajamas, completely unhurried, and left Chung-yi sitting on the living room floor in his overcoat. Kennedy appeared from the hallway with a glass of water, looked at his son on the floor, and handed it to him without comment. She decided in the car, Chung-yi said. I know, Kennedy said. Jian told Harin the second day. She said, I have made my decision about Appa. He is ours now. He paused. Harin cried for 20 minutes. Chung-yi stared at the wall. Dad, he said. Son, Kennedy said. Neither of them said anything else. Kennedy sat down beside him on the floor. 70 years old, cream linen, full dignity intact. And they stayed there in the quiet of a house that was no longer empty, and that was enough. Harin announced the California trip at breakfast on a Saturday. She said it the way she said most things she had already decided, warmly, cheerfully, and with the complete absence of any space for negotiation. We leave in 2 weeks, she said, setting down Kennedy's tea. Los Angeles first, then San Francisco. The girls have never been to America. Arin looked up from her porridge. She was wearing a navy blue pinafore dress over a white long-sleeved blouse, white tights, and small navy leather shoes with a single gold buckle, because Harin had decided on day 1 that mornings in this house were also occasions, and occasions deserve dressing for. America, Arin repeated. America, Harin confirmed. Arin turned to Jian, who was sitting beside her in a matching pinafore in burgundy, her hair in a single neat braid with a thin burgundy ribbon threaded through it. The 1-second conversation happened. Then Arin turned back. We will need new shoes, she said. You will have new shoes, Kennedy said. He was in his cream suit already because Kennedy Adam wore the cream suit the way other men wore armor, easily, naturally, like it had always been his. And hats, Arin added. America has strong sun. It does, Kennedy agreed. Grandpa. Arin looked at him with the directness she reserved for important matters. Will you wear that suit? The cream one. She gestured at what he was already wearing. Jian and I decided you look most like yourself in it. You should wear it in America so Americans can see. Kennedy looked at Harin. Harin looked at her tea with a private smile that she had been wearing, in one form or another, for 3 weeks straight. Jian looked up from her bowl. You are very handsome in it, Grandpa, she said quietly, and returned to eating. Kennedy straightened his collar. Then I'll wear the cream suit. Chung-yi did not go. There were things in Seoul requiring his particular kind of attention, things that lived in the space between what was legal and what was necessary, things that did not get discussed at breakfast tables or on California holidays. He had built a life in that space and it did not pause for school holidays. He came to the house on the morning of departure. He was in a black double-breasted coat over a black turtleneck and dark trousers, the outfit of a man who had decided that a farewell in a driveway was still an occasion worth dressing for. His jaw was set. His hands were in his pockets. Harin kissed his cheek and held his face for a moment the way she had done since he was small, the gesture that said everything she had already said too many times to say again. Kennedy shook his hand. The handshake that was an embrace for men who did not perform embraces. It lasted 3 seconds longer than handshakes usually do. Then Chung-yi crouched in front of the twins. Arin was in a camel wool coat over a white dress, with camel leather ankle boots and a small matching beret that Harin had found somewhere and placed on her head that morning. She looked at 7 years old, like someone who had been dressing for international travel her entire life. She put both hands on his face the moment he was at her level. She always did this when she needed him to be fully present and not just adjacent. "Appa, I am here," he said. "Their thing." He was always here when she held his face. "Eat lunch," she said. "Every day. Not at your desk. At a table. With a chair. Like a person." "I will." "That is not a promise." "I promise," he said. She studied him for one more second, checking the way she always checked, whether the promise had weight behind it. Then she released his face satisfied. He looked at Jian. Jian was in a forest green wool coat with a wide collar, cream gloves, and small green leather boots that laced at the ankle. Her braid was pinned up for travel. She looked precise and composed the way she always looked, which was the way she always felt, except that most people could not read the difference and Chung-yi had learned to read it. She stepped forward and straightened his collar. Just that, both small gloved hands at his collar, adjusting something that did not need adjusting, which meant it was not about the collar. "We will bring you something from California," she said. "You don't need." "We want to," she said. Quiet. Final. The way Jian closed things. Not with force but with completeness, like a door that shut perfectly on its frame. He watched the car pull out of the driveway. He stood there until it was gone, and then he stood there a little longer. Marcus, who was staying behind for the Seoul household, came to stand nearby and said nothing. He understood the value of nearby and nothing. Chung-yi straightened his coat. Went back to work. The flight to Los Angeles was business class. Arin had changed into a cream linen set for the flight, loose trousers, a matching top with small embroidery at the cuffs, and white slip-on sneakers, because Harin understood that travel comfort was its own kind of elegance. Jian wore a soft gray set with a thin stripe, her hair down for the first time in days, which she only allowed when she was somewhere she felt safe. Miss Park, their flight attendant, efficient, professional, 6 years on this route, made her error at the cabin entrance. Kennedy was walking ahead in the cream suit. Harin beside him in a sage green dress with a silk scarf, the girls behind them with their carry-ons. All of them moving the way people move when they know where they are going. Miss Park stepped forward with a smile that was professionally calibrated. "Sir." She looked at Kennedy, at his height, his accent, the way the human brain sometimes makes decisions faster than it should. "Business class is for ticketed passengers. May I see?" "He has a boarding pass," Arin said. Miss Park looked down. Arin was looking up at her with the expression that was not anger. It was something that landed harder than anger. It was the look of someone who had expected better and was now quietly, unfortunately, being proven right. "We all have boarding passes," Arin continued clearly. "My grandpa has flown this airline more times than I have been alive, which is 7 years. So that is many times. Sweetheart, I just need to." "He is not just a passenger," Arin said. Her voice did not rise. "I did not need to. He is our grandpa and he is very important, and you are making him stand in the aisle and other people are watching, and I do not think that is what this airline wants to be known for." Jian said nothing. But she had moved, quietly without drawing attention, to stand directly beside Harin. Not in front of her. Beside her. Her small gloved hand just touching Harin's arm. Present. Steady. A 7-year-old deciding that if something uncomfortable was happening, Harin would not stand through it alone. Harin looked at Ms. Park with the stillness of a woman who had decided that events would resolve themselves without her assistance, and they would do so completely. Kennedy said very gently, "Perhaps your supervisor?" The supervisor, a senior cabin manager named Mr. Co, 14 years on this airline, the kind of man who knew a significant name when it appeared on a manifest, arrived, looked at his tablet, looked at Kennedy Adam, and experienced a very rapid and comprehensive internal rearrangement. "Mr. Adam." His register shifted 3 levels. "Please accept my." "No need," Kennedy said. "Easy. Warm. Atlanta in every syllable. We just like to sit down." They were escorted to their seats. As Miss Park stood recalibrating her morning, Arin passed her. She stopped. She looked up. "Grandpa will not make a complaint," Arin said quietly. "He is not that kind of person. But I think next time," she paused, choosing the words the way Jian had taught her to choose words for accuracy. Just look at the pass and say welcome. That is all. Just welcome. Then she walked to her seat, climbed up with perfect composure, and buckled herself in. Miss Park delivered warm towels 20 minutes later. The good ones. Unrequested. Her smile this time was different, it had something honest in it. Jian received hers with a small nod. Arin said, "Thank you. Do you have apple juice?" "Not the small cup." Harin looked out the window. Kennedy had been looking out the window for the last 5 minutes for the same reason. Los Angeles was golden and indifferent to everyone's feelings about it. They moved through it like people who knew how to move through cities. Kennedy drawing attention without seeking it. Harin finding the best food within 10 minutes of arriving anywhere. The girls in their fresh California outfits absorbing everything through wide eyes. Harin had dressed them for the LA warmth. Arin in a pale pink sundress with white sandals and a wide-brimmed white hat. Jian in a yellow linen dress with cognac sandals and a smaller hat with a ribbon. Both of them looked like they belonged to a world where someone had always loved them. Harin had decided this was not just clothing. This was a statement. This was a fact made visible. It was on the third day at a farmer's market in Santa Monica that Jian stopped walking. Arin turned back. Jian. Jian was looking across the market. There was a woman at a flower stall. Tall in a white linen dress, long hair loose. She was laughing, really laughing with her whole face, at something the vendor had said. Then an elderly man nearby dropped his bags. Oranges and tomatoes scattered. The woman moved before anyone else registered what had happened. She was already crouching, already gathering, handing things back to the old man, saying something that made him laugh too. She had not looked around first to see who was watching. She had simply moved. Jian watched this for a long time. Then she turned to Arin. The conversation happened in 1 second. "Grandma," Arin said, taking Harin's hand, "we want to look at the flowers." Her name was Sonia Benjamin. She was examining peonies when 2 small girls appeared beside her, one in pink with a wide hat, one in yellow with a ribbon, with the focused energy of people who had somewhere specific to be and had identified her as the destination. "Hello," Arin said. Sonia looked down. Smiled immediately, genuinely. "Hello. Flower shopping?" "Not exactly," Arin said. "We were watching you." Sonia blinked. Then laughed, surprised and real. "That's very direct." "Jian says being direct saves time," Arin said. "Indirect is just slow, honest." Sonia looked at Jian. Jian looked back at her the way she looked at things she was deciding about, thoroughly and without rush. "Jian sounds very wise," Sonia said. "She is the wisest person I know," Arin said, with a sincerity that had no performance in it at all. "What is your name?" "Sonia." "Yours?" "Arin." "And Jian." "We are from Seoul." Pause perfectly timed. "We have a father in Seoul. His name is Chung-yi. He is 35. He is very serious and very handsome, and he does not eat lunch properly even though we have fixed his schedule twice." Sonia's mouth curved. "He sounds like someone who needs looking after." "Yes," Arin said. "That is exactly the right way to say it." Jian spoke for the first time. "Do you come to Seoul?" "A few times a year," Sonia said. "For work." Jian looked at Arin. Arin looked at Jian. "Would you like to meet our grandparents?" Arin said. "Grandma Harin is very good at knowing if she likes someone. She will like you." A pause. "We already know she will like you." Sonia looked at these 2 girls. 7 years old, white hat, yellow ribbon, operating with the composure of people twice their age, and felt something between amusement and genuine, unguarded warmth. "I'd love to," she said. Harin liked her in 20 seconds. Kennedy gave it 25 and then shook her hand and said, "Your handshake is good." Most people have stopped understanding why that matters. Sonia said, "My father taught me." Kennedy said, "Your father was right." They had coffee at a nearby stall. Sonia and Harin talked the way certain women do when they recognize something in each other, quickly, without the usual architecture of small talk, skipping the beginning and starting in the middle where the real things are. Kennedy asked about her work and listened the way he listened to everything, with his full attention and no performance of it. The twins sat between them and said almost nothing. This was noted by Harin, who understood that Arin saying almost nothing was the loudest possible signal. When they parted an hour later, Harin held Sonia's hand and said, "You must visit us in Seoul." "I would love that," Sonia said. We will tell our father you are coming, Arin said. He should know a good person is on the way. It is only fair. Walking back through the market, Harin looked at Kennedy. Kennedy looked at Harin. No words. 31 years of marriage made words optional for the important things. Harin was smiling the specific smile, the one Kennedy recognized from the evening she told him she was pregnant, from the morning she said she wanted to move to Seoul, from the Thursday she put a folder in front of Chung Ae between courses. The smile that meant, I see exactly what is happening and I believe in it completely. Behind them, Jian took Arin's hand as they walked. Good. Arin said quietly. Jian squeezed once. Good. Sonia Benjamin came to Seoul in the spring. She came for work. 2 weeks, she said. She stayed 5 weeks without entirely meaning to, the way certain cities hold certain people beyond what was planned. Chung Ae met her on a Tuesday evening. He came straight from the office, black wool suit, white shirt, no tie, the particular look of a man who was always between one important thing and the next. He had been told by Arin that morning over breakfast that Grandma's friend from California is coming to dinner, and had registered this as information without yet understanding what it was. He walked into his parents' kitchen and stopped. Sonia was at the stove with Jian. Jian was in her home clothes, a soft cream knit set with small pearl buttons that Harin had ordered specifically for evenings, standing on her step stool, explaining Mayakguk to Sonia with the seriousness of someone passing on protected knowledge. The seaweed must soak long enough, Jian was saying. Not too long. You will know when it is ready because the color changes. Here, she pointed. Do you see? I see, Sonia said. She was leaning in, actually looking, actually listening the way she had listened to the old man at the farmer's market with her whole self. Good, Jian said. Now stir. Slowly. It is not a race. Sonia stirred slowly. Jian watched the pot with her characteristic focus. Then quietly, privately, she smiled. The small one. The one that meant she was genuinely pleased and was allowing herself to know it. Chung Ae stood in the kitchen doorway. Neither of them had heard him. He watched Sonia laugh at something Jian said next. Surprised, open, completely unperformed, and Jian look up at her with an expression he had only seen her use for 4 people in the world. Something moved in his chest. He recognized it now. He had learned to recognize it, these moments that arrived without warning and turned out to be the ones that mattered. Jian moving his father's soup bowl. Arin holding his face and saying, I am here. Kennedy sitting on the floor with a shadow rabbit that was almost right. He recognized what it felt like when something was true before you had words for it. Arin materialized beside him. She did this, appeared from adjacent rooms with no audible transition, as if she simply decided to be somewhere and was immediately there. She looked up at him. He looked down at her. She was in a blush pink knit dress with white stockings and small white house slippers with a bow, which Harin had produced from somewhere because Harin believed in beautiful slippers. You are 4 minutes late, she said. I am on time, he said. Dinner was ready at 7. It is 7:04. She said this pleasantly as pure fact. Then she tilted her head toward the stove. That is Sonia. She is our friend from California. She is very good. She listens properly and she does not talk more than she needs to. A pause. Jian likes her. You know what that means. Chung Ae knew what that meant. Did you plan this? He said. Not quite a question. Arin looked deeply, genuinely offended. We are 7 years old. That is not an answer. She patted his arm twice. Go inside, Appa. The soup needs one more person to be complete. Then she walked into the kitchen ahead of him and announced to the room. Appa is here. He is not as serious as he seems. Also, he eats lunch now. We fixed that. She climbed onto her stool at the counter. Sonyuni, tell him about the peonies. He does not know enough about flowers. Sonia looked up from the pot. She looked at him across the kitchen. This man in the black suit who was standing in a doorway looking at her like she was a sentence he hadn't finished reading yet. He looked back. Kennedy appeared from the hallway with a book, took one look at the kitchen, turned around completely, and walked back the way he came. Harina, he called. I see it, Harin called from the living room. Good. Yes. 31 years. They had learned to need very few words for the important things. Chung Ae walked into the kitchen. He picked up a spare spoon from the counter, unhurried, natural, like he had decided the kitchen was somewhere he was allowed to be. and stood beside Jian. Does it need anything? He asked, looking at the soup. Jian considered this with her full attention, the way she considered everything. A little more time, she said. He leaned against the counter. He waited. Sonia watched him from the other side of the pot. This man who ran 4 countries from a building with no name on it, leaning against a kitchen counter in his expensive suit, waiting on a 7-year-old's judgment about soup, and something in her expression settled like a question that had just been answered before it was asked. Arin from her stool watched Sonia watching Chang'e. Arin looked at Jian. Jian, without taking her eyes off the pot, gave the smallest nod. Good. Later, much later, when the soup was finished and the table was full and Kennedy had told a story about Atlanta that made Sonia laugh, the Rayal laugh, and Harin had looked at him like she was still, after 31 years, slightly amazed by him. Chang'e sat at his end of the table and looked at this room. His father, enormous and golden in the cream suit, performing warmth that was not performance at all. His mother, radiant in the way that people are radiant when they have gotten exactly what they quietly, persistently worked for. 2 daughters in their beautiful evening clothes, one talking without pause, one watching everything and filing it away, both of them completely, entirely, irreversibly his. And across the table, a woman who had listened to an old man drop oranges in a California market and moved before anyone else thought to. He had not ordered any of this. He had signed a paper he thought was insurance. He had stood on a driveway in a navy suit and been told he was a father. He had eaten lunch for the first time in 4 years because a 7-year-old sent a note to his secretary. He had sat on a living room floor in a coat that cost more than the floor and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He was good at running things. He was learning, slowly, at the instruction of 2 girls who had arrived without warning and rearranged everything without permission, that the life he had built was not the same as the life he was supposed to have. They were not the same thing. He had confused them for 11 years. Arin looked at him across the table. Appa, she said. Yes. You are smiling. He touched his face. He had not noticed. Am I? He said. Yes. She looked extremely satisfied. Jian said you would. Eventually. She picked up her spoon. She is always right about these things. Jian, who was pretending to be focused entirely on her soup, allowed herself one small private smile. Chang'e looked at his daughters, at his parents, at the woman his daughters had found in a California market and brought home like a truth he hadn't known he needed. He had run 4 countries. He had built something from silence and pressure and will alone, and he had thought that was what strength looked like. He was revising his definition again. This time he thought it might be the final revision. Some things needed a little more time. And sometimes the family you never ordered, the life you never planned, the table that filled itself while you were looking somewhere else, sometimes those were the only things that were ever truly yours. Thank you for staying until the end. This story was made for you. The ones who believe in love that arrives sideways, family that chooses you back, and softness that does not ask permission. This has been Black Silk Stories, where every story is a world and every world hits different. If this story found you, it found you for a reason. Subscribe. Drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs a story like this in their life.